prevent all of that hassle for you, and we're going to tell you how we successfully remove a Foley catheter and, more importantly, keep it out.
Such a subspecialty, and then geriatric urology is even more of a subspecialty.
You have to approach it differently. All right, so how do we do it? We start them on Flomax.
Well, yeah, so they have a Foley catheter for one reason or another. One of the big reasons that we see is they've been admitted from the hospital, status quo, some sort of surgery, more times than not, it's a broken hip or something like that. So they have a Foley catheter, and there's usually instructions for the long-term care facility to follow up with urology, to have avoiding trial done to remove the catheter, because prior they did it wrong.
Well, we want to prevent all of that hassle for you, and we're going to tell you how we successfully remove a Foley catheter and, more importantly, keep it out.
Right, because this population, I think one thing that in the long-term care arena, sometimes specialties and et cetera don't understand, but definitely I think that the primary cares and the long-term cares understand this population is such a subspecialty, and then geriatric urology is even more of a subspecialty that we do it different.
Well, what works for an ambulatory, cognitively intact person who is under the age of 65 doesn't work for that same person who's over 65, cognitively has issues, they have mobility issues, they have 10 comorbidities, they're on 10, 12 medications.
Right.
It's the difference between treating pediatrics and treating adults. They're very different people. So you have to approach it differently. All right, so how do we do it? We start them on Flomax.
Well, yeah, so they have a Foley catheter for one reason or another. One of the big reasons that we see is they've been admitted from the hospital, status quo, some sort of surgery, more times than not, it's a broken hip or something like that. So they have a Foley catheter, and there's usually instructions for the long-term care facility to follow up with urology, to have avoiding trial done to remove the catheter, because prior, more likely than not, obviously they didn't have a catheter. So we want to get that out because of, the risk for infection and all the other things that go with it. Okay.
So we start them on Flomax.
Right. So if they're not on Flomax, we start them on Flomax.
Male or female?
Correct, yes. So, right.
Right, we do the same thing for female.
Right.
Okay.
So Flomax 0.4 milligrams a day. And if for some reason they're already on Flomax 0.4 milligrams a day, then bump it up to 0.8 milligrams a day.
And we usually give it at HS, and the reason is one of the negative side effects of Tamsulsin, Flomax, is that they could have hypotension. So if they all of a sudden try to get up from the wheelchair or climb out of bed, and their blood pressure drops, they could fall and hurt themselves. So we try to give the medication at HS when they are supposedly sleeping.
Right. But, I always have to laugh, though, because there's some patients that we do give it in the morning because,
they're bedbound and they don't climb out.
Yeah. Or maybe, for a male who's got BPH and he doesn't have a Foley catheter and he doesn't want to be up peeing all night. Yes. So, we'll give it to him in the morning. But they'll say, his blood pressure drops. I'm like, take him off his calcium channel blocker, his beta blocker, and, his diuretic, maybe he's probably on 2 of them, like HCTZ and Lasix or something. Like, okay, so they have all these other medications that are causing hypotension. So just reduce or maybe eliminate one of those if possible, even briefly, just so we can put them on the Flomax to be able to get the catheter out.
Okay. All right, so the standard format is Flomax 0.4 milligrams once a day for 3 days. And then
we're going to increase it to 0.8 in 3 days, because it takes about 3-4 days for Flomax to take effect.
Get a therapeutic level.
Correct.
Right.
So
first 3 days, 0.4 milligrams. Right. The next 3 days, 0.8 milligrams. And
then we're going to add Bethanechol, 25 milligrams 3 times a day. on day 1 along with the point 0.4 Flomax. Yes, we're going to do both because that is going to give them the good old college try. We're not messing around here.
We want that
We're
out.
not giving them 0.4 Flomax and taking the catheter out in 3 days. We're going big guns to get these catheters out because maybe it's anecdotal, but through experience, we find that these patients, when they go under anesthesia, so does their bladder, and their bladder goes to sleep. And sometimes it can take a really, huge kick to
Wake
be able
them
to
up.
get correct, to wake that bladder up.
Mhm.
So, and at least we're only doing this once too, because patients can get, upset and ornery, and rightfully so, when you give them maybe just 0.4 Flomax and in 3 days pull it out, and then all of a sudden they're in retention again, which can cause UTIs and issues, and then they're going back to the hospital to get another catheter put in because maybe it was difficult to put it in the first place. So we only want to do this one time. So it's either going to be one and done, or they're going to fail, and then we're going to put the catheter back in, and that is what works like 100% of the time. Either it is or it isn't.
So just to recap, day
Right.
1,
Right.
we're going to start Flomax 0.4 milligrams and Bethanechol.
25 milligrams 3 times a day.
So the Flomax is staying at 0.4 for 3 days.
Mhm.
Then on day 4, they're still on Bethanechol. We add 0.8 milligrams of Flomax, Tamsulsin, once
Right.
a day for 3 days. So that brings us up to day 6.
Right.
Then on day 7,
Which can't be a Friday, it can't be a Saturday, and it can't be a Sunday.
Has
It's
to be
going to
a
be Monday morning
or
at
Tuesday.
6. Yeah, okay, all right. At 6 a.m. Okay, or
You pull the catheter on
Mhm.
Monday morning at 6 a.m.
not on a holiday Monday.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So if this is day 7 now.
So if you have to extend, your days, that's okay. So say if day 6 is, a Friday, we're gonna, keep doing what we're doing
until it's
Monday or
Monday,
Tuesday.
6 a.m.
Right,
And then we're going to pull the catheter.
Correct.
Okay. And we're going to monitor post-void residuals
right,
every shift. We're going to put them on intake and output for 3 days. And if the post-void residual is greater than 400,
400.
not
We give-
250, not 300, not 350,
we give them
400.
some leeway
Yeah.
with that. They're older and
Okay.
we're a little more generous.
Okay.
So
If the post-void is greater than 400, how often? 3 times?
so Q shift. So you want to check their PVR, post void residual, Q shift for 3 days. If it's greater than 400 cc's, then you need to straight cath them to drain the bladder. Continue with the protocol for 3 days. If you have to straight cath them 3 or more times in 3 days, then more likely that Foley needs to go back in, and then we'll back off on the medications. But at that point, if they've failed by our criteria in 3 days, then you'll be giving us a call so that we can further advise. But
We find that this has been a very effective method for successfully de-seeing Foley catheters, and it works. We think
almost all the time,
almost all of the
right?
time.
You've just
Yeah.
got to hit them hard
Mhm.
with those with the medications to get them urinating. And again, if they're on multiple blood pressure medications and that's a factor, well, then I always talk to primary care. I'm like, well, hey, can we back off the 100 milligrams of metoprolol?
And so a simple way to understand this is what the Flomax does is it relaxes the neck of the bladder. It literally opens the door. What the Bethanechol does is it pushes the urine out. So one medication is opening the door and the second medication is pushing it out. So that's how it effectively works.
Right. So, and then after, the 3-day voiding trial, and we have a nice form that we give to our facilities so they can keep track of I's and O's and et cetera. If they've failed, the Foley goes back in, titrate back off the medications, and then we just kind of reassess from there. However, though, if they're successful, the Foley stays out, and then it's easier to titrate back off of or titrate down medications than it would be is if we only put them on 0.4 Flomax, pulled the Foley, and then we're starting from scratch again. So we're doing like medications in increments. It's easier personally in my practice to, back down on medications than it is to have to keep redoing your voiding trial. Another thing is too, a lot of the buildings don't have bladder scanners.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So unfortunately,
They'd
to
have to
check a
You have
PVR,
to straight cath.
they're straight cathing them.
But make sure that they've emptied their bladder to the best of their ability.
Right.
If they don't get toileted, you want to say to the aide, when the diaper is soaking wet, come get me, and then I'll check with a catheter, with a straight cath, to see what's left in the bladder.
Right, exactly. And that's like it.
Well, also, if you have questions, you can email us
Yep.
at MK Urology LLC